Welcome to Trigger Proof with Mikki Bey, the podcast that helps you stop reacting and start responding. I'm your host, Mikki Bey, emotional regulation coach, speaker, and guide. Each week, we'll explore real stories, practical tools, and conversations that will help you stay calm, confident, and in control, no matter what life throws your way. Let's get started. Welcome to Trigger Proof, the podcast with Mikki Bey. I am extremely excited about this next guest. So I have to give you a little bit of backstory about how we met. So I was a speaker at a women's health conference, and this particular speaker was also there. And when I tell you, she blew my mind so much, I had to accost her at lunch and tell her how much she blew my mind with the information that she gave. And so I really want you to listen clearly to the information that she's going to give us today, because it affects Black women, and particularly Black and brown women. But I want you to hear the correlation between emotional regulation and neurodivergence, because this, for me personally, in my own life, was an aha moment hearing the information that she gave at that summit. And so I really wanted to just invite her here today so that we can keep spreading this, because she is really driving this conversation around neurodivergence and Black women. And so without further ado, I would like Dr. Samara Toussaint to introduce herself to all of you Trigger Proof listeners. Hello.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Toussaint. People call me Dr. T at the practice. I own my own mental health practice in New York, mainly New York City. We treat people who are neurodivergent, children, adults, teens. And a personal, I actually was diagnosed with autism. So I'm neurodivergent myself, but I'm late diagnosed. I was diagnosed a few months ago, and it was a very powerful experience. Yeah. So I'm happy to share that because it's part of my journey. And I think that it helped really inspire me to help other women, because in diagnosing other women, I sought the diagnosis out myself, because I was like, oh, something's not right here either. And we can get into that, because I found myself masking a lot. And I told someone, like, I masked so hard, I fooled myself, because I was like, I was working with children. I was working with autistic children day in, day out, and I didn't know I was autistic myself because I masked so much. And when I like really lifted that veil, I saw myself who I really was. And I've been helping other women do the same. So it's been part of my mission. And that's why I attended that Women's Summit, because I feel like it's important for women to really know who they are and to get that diagnosis, to get that support.
Absolutely. I didn't even know that about you. So we're definitely going to get into that. But I want to just like level set for everyone who may not know, when we say neurodivergent, what are we including into that? And also, you mentioned masking. So there's the colloquial term of I'm wearing a mask, but what does that actually mean in terms of being neurodivergent? And what is neurodivergence?
Yeah, so I'll explain. Neurodivergent is a tricky term because everyone just automatically assumes like ADHD or autism, and it covers so much. And like that training I was doing, there's also includes dyslexia, learning challenges, sensory processing disorder, which is like having difficulties with like sensory input, like light, sound, smells, and things like that. Trauma is also part of that. OCD. So those all fall under the neurodivergent umbrella. And pretty much it's like my brain looks at the world very differently. And neurotypical doesn't mean a normal brain, because it's not necessarily a normal brain. Everybody's brain is very different. However, neurotypical means this is the way society has been set up. We're going to do things one way. We're going to sit for long periods of time. We're going to do these things. We're going to teach children the same way over and over again. And neurodiversity really calls into, let's also understand that people just learn differently. Like, they're not wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's just that I perceive things, I look at the situations very differently than you. And that comes into play with masking, because oftentimes we're trying to mask to fit in, right? Neurotypical world, or the way the world has been built, it shuts neurodivergent people out. It makes you feel like, oh, I'm less than. Let me hide the way I read. Let me hide the way I do math. Let me hide all my quirks as an autistic individual. Let me hide my restlessness by doing something else. Like, we're just taught to hide. We're taught to hide those parts of ourselves because you don't want to be labeled as weird, lazy, dumb. So you mask parts of yourself, or the other things, you put on a mask. You put on a mask to show up people like you're not that way. Like, you might mask to feel more neurotypical. to be like, oh, I'm like y'all. Don't look over here. I'm like everybody else when you're really not. And then you go home and you're just exhausted from having to wear so many masks, take them off. Right? And I was recently speaking to someone and they were asking like, what's the difference between code switching and masking? And I was like,
it was in my brain right now.
yeah.
Yes.
And I say code switching has an end. Like I code switch at work, or if I'm with my girls, like my coworkers I love, like my code switching might end. But the thing about it is masking doesn't end. Masking has no end. You might mask at work, you might mask and code switch at work, and then mask at home, especially if you're like me who comes from a Haitian background where no, if they really don't want any of your traits to be shown. And when I was doing a training recently, someone said, I actually mask more at home than I do anywhere else. And I was like, that's also very powerful because I do find that neurodivergent people mask more at home where they're supposed to feel safe. And I think culture plays a part, religion, like where your family's from, your cult, your gender expression. Black men might mask as well because they want to appear a certain way. I can't like this because I got to show them that I like that instead. So it's just masking it's like you never take it off, or you just keep putting on different identities of yourself. And you can lose yourself. You can lose who you are or parts of yourself. And that's what essentially happened to me. I put on so many masks. I didn't realize like who I was at the end of it.
Let's get into that because you have my brain on fire right now with all the things I want to talk to you about. Because I think even if you're not neurodivergent, we can all understand wearing a mask in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form, especially as a person of color or as a Black
Mhm.
person. And I know when I was in corporate, I made a very conscious decision not to code switch. I am a girl from
Yeah.
Detroit. I've worn my hair natural. When I first got into corporate, I felt like I needed to assimilate and I was wearing like the long weaves and all this kind of stuff. And it just really was not me. And so I made a very conscious decision to not change my accent, to not code switch. And
Mhm.
it was really scary to do that and didn't
Right.
know how I was going to be received. Now, when I hear you say that people are masking at home, that is really surprising to me, but also not. But I think
Mhm.
the thing that comes up for me is where are neurodivergent people safe? Where do they feel? Where can you feel that you are accepted in home, literally inside of your body, if even at your physical home with your own family, you don't
Right.
feel like you fit in? So for you, how did that show up? Because you work in this industry, you know all the
Yeah.
signs and the signals, and yet you still missed it for yourself. How does that happen? Can you give us the how that can even be the case?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. So I think there's two different time points, I would say, or maybe three different time points, and there's all like very sad ones. And I have to go back to history with this one because people will say, oh, there wasn't autistic people in my day. There wasn't ADHD in my day. People don't
Right.
realize is that America and society in general has a very dark history in hiding neurodivergent individuals. They were hidden, like those nasty asylums that have been shut down that's where neurodivergent individuals were. So they weren't safe at home or school. They were put into those asylums. So that's a time period like in the 50s, 60s, that era where people really struggled. And then came a time like 70s, 80s, there was more of a movement to be like, no, like children deserve to be at home. They deserve to feel safe. Like we can't just shut people out and just lock the key and call it a day, but people were still struggling with that concept. They were just like, I don't trust it. I do think that I would say like now there's more of a movement where neurodivergent people can feel safe because there's more awareness and there might be more awareness at school. There might be more openness at school. So I will say that if some people don't feel safe at home, they might feel safer at school. They might feel safer with their college groups, or they might feel safer with their homegirl that they did recently just found out they were late diagnosed at brunch. So I've seen that, which has been really great. But for where I was, there wasn't a lot of awareness. There wasn't a lot of talk about it. And I would say just for me personally, I definitely struggled and there wasn't a safe space. Really. My only safe space was like retreating into my own mind and doing my own thing and try to hide myself. but I feel like if someone can relate, like just being by yourself and just doing things like pacing or just being restless or being who you are in the safety of your own home, but with the door closed. So that's when I personally felt the safest, was when my door was closed and no one was watching.
Okay. So, what are some of the most typical symptoms of being neurodivergent that present in Black women that we could be missing? Because when I heard you speak, one of the things that really struck me was emotional regulation
Hmm.
and the inability to manage your emotions being one of the symptoms. And I was like, dang, that's me and everybody I serve. Can you just walk us through what are some of the things that you see most frequently as maybe a sign that you should look into getting to being evaluated?
I think there's two big signs. The first is burnout. I noticed that they're just like fatigued. They're just like, I'm always tired. Even when I rest, I'm always tired. And that could be for a lot of reasons. Like for someone who's autistic, they might be masking constantly throughout the day. For someone who's undiagnosed with ADHD, they're trying to do all these different techniques that aren't working, or they're getting in trouble a lot at work. So they're staying later at work to make up for it, right? What takes someone an hour, someone with undiagnosed ADHD, it might take them 3 hours. So they're struggling more and they're more tired. Or someone with dyslexia, same thing. It could be like they're looking over the work over and over again, trying not to make a mistake. So I definitely see burnout. And the other thing is perfectionism. Is when I'm working with Black women, I'll often be like, so tell me, what are the statements you heard as a child? And that will usually tell me everything. They'll be like, I was called slow, I was called dumb, I was called this. My parents didn't think I was trying hard enough. People called me weird. I felt isolated. When I hear what happened in their childhood, it just helps me connect the dots because then perfectionism is what compensates. And that's the emotional regulation piece. Because when I make a mistake or when I fail to meet my own expectations, I'm not okay. I'm not well. I'm irritable. I'm upset. So I think burnout and perfectionism create that chaos or create that combo that leads to the emotional regulation piece.
Okay, that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense because you have that pressure as a child, right? And you can never meet the mark. And then you just become obsessed with doing it. I hear this
Yeah.
all the time from my clients. And I always try to tell them, like, there is no right. There's no
Yeah.
right way. It is extremely hard to get these high functioning, high achieving women to accept that your best is good enough. What you did was perfect. That was perfect. So, talk to me a little bit about for Black women where this typically shows itself, because you mentioned that most of us are
Mhm.
late diagnosed, including yourself. So, where has this been missed all along the way? Walk me through that journey.
Yeah, I would say in childhood for sure. There's two things that happen in their childhood is that it could be that they were identified, but the parent didn't trust the school enough. And the parent was like, don't say that about my child. My child, she just needs to do this. That happens, especially with
Mhm.
my girls with ADHD, where they were just being like, she just needs more discipline or she just needs to go to church. So sometimes you'll have the parent interfere. And that is hard for a lot of women I work with because they're just like, I could have got that help because I remember my teacher saying something to my mom and she ignored it. Or it's the
Mhm.
opposite, or we have a parent who's fighting for it and everyone is just saying, no, she's fine. And this is where you get the compliant girl. That was me growing up. I was very compliant. I did whatever you asked me to do, no problem. Like people just thought I was the sweetest thing. And they're like, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just a delight. But I was masking. I was just I that's a part of a mask is I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just like me. Just accept me. So those are two things that happen, which is why it gets missed. But when I diagnose women, it's usually gonna be in college where there's less support. So you're in a classroom full of 90 people. Your teacher's not gonna care. They're not gonna be like, oh, don't worry, sweetheart, you'll catch up. They don't really know you. You're student number 90. So then it's just, oh, I'm really struggling. Or I'll notice it in grad school. So I'll have to do accommodation or write accommodations for them. because they'll be like, I thought I survived. I thought I made it. I must be dumb. Like, I'm not, everybody else around me is catching up and I'm not. So they were doing really well up until, so when there's less support, that happens. Motherhood is definitely another time that I diagnose women because they're able to overcompensate using a lot of strategies. But children, and I say this as someone who has a toddler, like they overstimulate you. Like really, it can get a lot for me, especially when she's crying. So a lot of times you'll notice the sensory part of it as a mom, and then you feel guilt and shame. Like, why am I repulsing at the fact that my daughter's crying? I should, I'm not a good mom. So then I'll hear women say, I'm not a good mom because like my daughter's tears make me want to run to the other room. I don't want to comfort her. I want to comfort myself. And I was recently at a conference where they were saying that like lower estrogen levels for a lot of women, their symptoms might actually increase. So we'll see that during menopause, during your period, girls with ADHD will notice that their ADHD symptoms are actually worse around their periods because they have lower estrogen levels. So there's so much things that we are still learning about women because a lot of research was done on men, especially white men. And now people are starting to say, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Why isn't this working for women? When women are burnt out or they're emotionally dysregulated, it's because none of the strategies were built for them. None of the strategies were there for them, or they're just catching up. Some men have a 20-year start on a lot of women because they were diagnosed early. So they were given intervention early. They were given strategies early. They were given medication early. So when you have someone who's late diagnosed in their 30s and they're struggling, like, of course, she's going to be burnt out and emotionally dysregulated because she's 20 to 30 years behind.
Wow. And this was the exact information that you gave at the conference that made me hunt you down, because I distinctly remember in my MBA program thinking I'm dumb and they shouldn't have let me in. I'm not supposed to be here. I don't know how I was literally sitting there like, how did they let me in? Because I felt like I was so far behind where everyone else is. And what I did not remember is that I'm dyslexic. And it wasn't until someone who has known me my whole life said to me, you don't remember you're dyslexic? And I said, no, because the same story you just mentioned, my mother refused to believe the teacher when I was, I don't know, in third, fourth grade. And she said, no, she's fine. She reads fine. She just gets nervous. She's shy. And that is absolutely not what is going on, because I have compensated for that my entire academic career and also struggled in all of my jobs, with the exception of the one I got now, which is the one I'm supposed to be in. But I really did struggle in all of the jobs that had a way you had to do things. Anything that was very structured, where I didn't have the creativity to create how I could maneuver and do things, I struggled with. So when I heard you say that, I was like, this is my whole life. And yes, I did make it through getting my MBA. And yes, I was successful in corporate and I'm a successful entrepreneur, but it felt like it was harder than it needed to be.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the other part was with motherhood. When I had my son, everything you just mentioned happened to me. I absolutely hated motherhood for the first almost 3 years. I had postpartum for almost 2 years. And I just thought it was a mistake. I was like, oh my God, who told me to have a kid? Who told me to have a kid? Which then, to your point, now you're in this shame spiral about not wanting to be a mom and feeling like I'm the only one that feels like this. Now, for me, that did pass. And I don't feel like that today. But when I first became a mother, it was very overwhelming to me. It was very overstimulating for me.
Yeah.
And not having the information that I could potentially be somewhere on the spectrum with something that would have been helpful to know that there may be a reason for the emotions that I have. And the reason why I coach emotional regulation, I tell all my clients, is because I need it. I have to live like this. I don't have an option. I live my life through the lens of emotional regulation because it is the number one tool that has helped me feel
Right.
some peace in the inside of my body. So I want to go back to something you mentioned just a second ago around the white male lens. I think that's really important to mention as to why we usually get the wrong diagnosis or are not getting diagnosed. Can you talk to me a little bit about why it's important to seek out professionals who can understand, like you said, the cultural nuances and
Yeah.
different things that we may experience that may not be in the mainstream landscape around this neurodivergent conversation?
As much as I love being in this field, I will say that it's still predominantly white and people present with so many biases and they present in their work. And I'll use my experience as just a psychologist of the reports I've seen of the way they describe Black children. And there's a lot of research that shows that their reports of Black children being assessed is a lot more negative. Like I've seen reports where I had to reevaluate a young girl who was 10 for autism because the initial report at 5, this man could have diagnosed her at 5, but then chose to say she was oppositional. Like the signs were clear, that all the traits were there. Like it was textbook case. I've never seen anything like that. It was textbook case autism straight out of the DSM, which we used to diagnose. And he just wrote, she just has behavioral issues. She's just oppositional. She doesn't want to listen to authority. And that hurt the mom because then that's 5 years that her daughter did not get anything. And that's what I see in my experience as an educator. I worked in New York City public schools. I worked in Long Island. I worked so many different places. When I see reports of Black children, they have the same theme. It's behavioral issues, oppositional. Meanwhile, they're autistic or they have ADHD or they're traumatized or they might have OCD. There's a resistance to seeing Black children with grace that I haven't seen. Like it is, I didn't think I didn't see it in school, but I definitely saw it when I was in the field. And I feel so bad because I don't think a lot of parents realize the way that people are writing the reports are in a child's record and follows them for a very long time. And when you're misdiagnosed or mislabeled, you're mistreated. And it takes a long time to catch up. Like this mom that I'm talking about, I'm so thankful for her because she was like, no, I'm not going to trust this white man. She was like, what he said doesn't make any sense. And that's what happens with a lot of Black parents, unfortunately. They're just like, you just told me like they're oppositional. Okay, so I'll use more corporal punishment. I'll use this. I'll use more of that. You
Wow.
know, the things that can be said to Black parents will just be okay, no problem. Like I'll just do what you said. But sometimes it takes another parent to be like, I don't trust this, and I want a second opinion from someone who looks like me to diagnose them accurately. And just specifically with autism, Black children are 3 to 4 times less likely to be diagnosed in their early years because the earlier you treat autism, the better. Like me personally, I can diagnose autism as early as 18 months. The earlier, the better, because that's what we call early intervention. So if I intervene between 0 and 3, there's a higher likelihood that they'll be able to speak, to be in a regular classroom instead of special education. But when you delay that, when I diagnose someone at 10, 12, 13, 14, it really widens the gap of them getting treatment.
Wow. It's mind blowing to me because,
Mhm.
like I said, I think about my own educational career and this exact thing happened to me. And my mother did not trust it. I don't blame her for not trusting
Yeah.
it. But then what then happens is here I am, 42, and still undiagnosed. And from listening to you, I'm like, I need to go and see what's going on here. And so that's really my next question is if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, everything Dr. T is saying is
Mhm.
me. And that was my story in school. That was my story in grad school. I've been burnt out. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a people pleaser. I have emotional regulation issues. What are the first next steps then? Like if I suspect that maybe I could be neurodivergent.
I think there's some people who just say, oh, I'm neurodivergent and an assessment won't help, but an assessment really will help because an assessment is supposed to give you answers. I always say a diagnosis, just ignore the diagnosis in the report. I talk about how your brain works. And just to give you an example, so you say that you have dyslexia, but like testing can help me identify what type and where it is. Because there's different, like you have dyslexia, the reading disability, but there's I mix letters, or I can read beautifully, but I don't understand what I read. So there's a comprehension part, or there's difficulty with sounding out letters. So there's 5 or 6 different types that I could test for to help you understand, and then I can give you strategies for it. So the earlier I give you strategies, let's say that you were diagnosed at, at 8 or 9, which is when I can usually diagnose dyslexia. You're given tools to then read a lot faster or identify what type of dyslexia you have. And then you're like, okay, so there's less time. Like, so you're practicing strategies, but when you're doing it at an older age, it is harder. But at the same time, it gives you so much answers, especially with ADHD. There's different parts, right? Is my memory more affected? Is my ability to solve problems more affected? Is my language skills, are they compromised? Can I articulate my thoughts? When you identify what areas your diagnosis impacts, then it makes it a lot easier to either request school accommodations, because sometimes I'll be like, you know what, you can't work on tasks as quickly, so I'm going to request extra time. Or I strongly encourage people to get work accommodations. So I'm like, if you get tested, you have a report, you take it to HR, and now you're able to get accommodations, because it's like you actually have something in paper, and people can't discriminate against you because
Right.
now you have ADHD or you have some diagnosis. So it's no different than having a cast on your arm or crutches. Like, people can't see neurodivergence. They can't see it. So having that diagnosis, having that report, having those recommendations, it makes your life a lot easier. Because they're, like you said, like I overcompensated or I compensated using other strategies. I can give more strategies that may be more helpful in the reports that you can try and practice every single day to make your life easier. So that's like, having a report is so liberating. And I will say, just to continue with that, is I wouldn't necessarily go to a psychiatrist because they don't necessarily do the testing that psychologists like myself do. Like, I'm trained in multiple assessments that can give you answers. Psychiatrists are there to really be like, okay, you have ADHD, here's your medication. But me and psychiatrists usually work hand in hand. Like, I just got a referral from a psychiatrist that was like, I know they have ADHD, but test them so they can understand what they need, and they also need accommodations. So usually, like, you need both a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I just want to put that out there because sometimes people will just go to a psychiatrist and that's it. And medication is helpful, but again, like, there's limits. Like, you have medication, there's still parts that you didn't train yourself on how to do. So now you have medication for ADHD, but the emotional regulation piece is still there. And it's just like, that's not something that medication can always treat.
So one of the things I'm always listening for when clients are coming in or thinking about coming into coaching are all of the overthinking, overfunctioning, over explaining, all of the overs, right? And how do you know if it's just an emotional regulation issue over it being like actual neurodivergence? Because like for me as a coach, that's not my lane. My lane
Yeah.
is helping people with the emotional aspect. So is there anything that you can give me that would be like, okay, no, actually this is that and not this? Because a lot of it is very similar. Like most of the things that you're saying
Yeah.
are things that I see. So I just want to have in my mind, is there something that tips the scale one or the other? Because honestly, I don't know really anyone, even in my own private life, who isn't exhibiting some of this of what you're
Yeah.
saying, right? So is everybody
Yeah.
neurodivergent, or are some of us really more so on the emotional regulation side?
I think it'd be a bit of both. I think for me, the biggest thing is that I assess for is child history, because neurodivergence, it's genetic or you are born with. It's not something that developed later on. So I think that for some people that might have happened. If they say I was fine, I had a great childhood, there were no issues. As a teen, I went to high school, got good grades, and then something may have happened to them in college. And then it just it flipped them upside down. And now they have emotional regulation issues. So that's someone that I wouldn't necessarily diagnose with neurodivergence, because I can't really track their childhood. So they're just experiencing emotional dysregulation because of other factors. But that's the biggest piece, is that I have to assess your childhood history, what went on, like what your grades. Some people are able to locate their grades. I actually had someone who was able to go to a school and get past reports. And there were so many things. It was like so fascinating because there were so many things that were missed. But if you're able to do that, if you're able to go back and get your records, get your report cards, some of us have, our mamas have them in their mattresses.
Right.
If you, my mom still has some things I have, but if you look at it and you look at the comments, unable to sit down, restless, always getting up. She's quiet. She's this. She's a little quirky. But so if you go back and you just look at those comments, like, and you'll be like, whoa, because some of us don't really remember our childhood or they block it out. But if we're able to make those connections, I think childhood is the biggest piece that helps me connect the neurodivergence diagnosis. If it's not really present, then there's something else going on.
Okay, no, that's really good. So if you were going to say, I'm going to give you a little trigger proof kit right now for 3 emotional regulation tips and 3 like mindset shifts, assuming this person isn't neurodivergent, they just have an emotional regulation issue, like the overworked woman who's just, I don't know what's going on, why I'm so out of whack. What would you say are the essential kind of like hallmarks to have inside of your emotional regulation toolkit?
I think for everyone, neurodivergent or not, routine is helpful. Because if you aren't able to stick to a schedule or set those boundaries around your routine, I notice that that's what really hurts women the most, especially when they're just like, one more task. I'll just stay like one more hour, or I can do it. I can push myself through it. Pushing yourself through it isn't helpful. So having a routine where it's just like, I'm going to work for 45 minutes and take a break for 15. That's what works for me because I can find myself losing myself into work, but if that happens, then I get tired. So I would say routines really ground you and connection. I think in a capitalistic society, we lose connection because everyone's very like, work by yourself, get this work done. And we lose sight of connection and we also lose sight of vulnerability. And people aren't really having honest conversations. They're just like, I'm fine, girl. Like, it's all good. No, like actually tell people how you feel because that lack of vulnerability, that lack of transparency does lead to those meltdowns. I can't regulate if I can't express how I feel and feel safe doing it. So I'm always just who in your circle do you connect with? Who is that person you can call and just break down with? And I find that a lot of women have been saying they don't know who. Like they go to brunch with them, but they're not talking to them, which is really sad.
That really is. And I agree with you. I think that having a support system in layers, right? So I always
Mhm.
say for me, if I take my own life, even though I'm in this industry, I always have a coach and a therapist on speed dial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that I need that support outside of friends and family, because friends and family are chat GPT where they're usually pretty biased, right?
Mhm.
And I need somebody who's going to be like, okay, let me hold the mirror up so you can see what's happening here, and someone who's going to really shoot me straight and be able to hold space but hold
Right.
accountable as well. And that's how I coach. I'm really a coach for people who want to be held accountable and who really want
That's
to
good.
change rapidly. I am not the coach to come to get the pat on the back. That's not what we do over here. But I think the last thing I want to ask you is just around how can we support Black women more, neurodivergent or not? I think, like I said, we're all having some of these symptoms in one way or another. And like, what do
Right.
you, in your opinion, what type of support do Black women need right now?
I think they really just need their permission to be themselves. And I would say masking, I want to say, is not only for neurodivergent people. Anyone can mask. Anyone can mask who they really are. And I find that Black women mask the most. Like, we really put a different version of ourselves out there. And it's hard to break because we grew up perming our hair. We grew up doing certain things. We grew up being a certain way to certain people. The women I work with in particular, the Black women I work with are always, I'm always like, do you ever feel angry? What they go, no, I have to think about it first. I have to rationalize it. And I see them intellectualizing their symptoms and or their anger and being like, I gotta think about it this way. I gotta be logical, all because they're fearful of looking angry or passionate. And I think again, like pushing down that anger, pushing down that frustration only leads to more of it. And the other thing is what's hurting us is the mental load, the superwoman syndrome, the superwoman, like, I think it's hurting us all. But even myself, I've been trying to break out of it. I've been telling my husband, like, I need a minute. Like, you need to step up. And I think we fall into the trap of, I gotta do everything. And there are some women that I won't even diagnose with ADHD or any type of, because I'm just like, you have 3 kids, right? It's only you, right? And your husband makes a 4th kid. Who's gonna step up for you
Mm.
if you don't ask for it? And they'll be like, yeah, I can't. I gotta be the one. No, you don't. You really don't have to be the one.
It breaks my heart because we've all been there
Mhm.
where I think that's cultural too,
It is.
where
Yeah, we seen our moms
we
do it.
I was just about to say, we were taught this. If there's a gap, you fill it and you do what needs to be done. You power through, you soldier on, and you cry in your pillow at night if that's what you need to do. But
Yeah.
next morning, you going to get up and go to work and take care of kids and come home and be everything for everyone.
Mhm.
And it is exhausting. And it's unfortunate, but if we are not there for ourselves first, we
Yeah.
have to be, like, it is not a luxury. Like, you have to
You
be
have
there for
to.
yourself first. And one of the things I always tell potential clients when they're thinking about coming into coaching is, what happens if you go down? Then what? If you really hit the skids, what happens then? So this is of paramount of importance for you to
Mhm.
figure out what's going on with yourself and for you to put your own life vest on first
Right.
before you go and try to save everybody else in the family. And this isn't even just nuclear family. Some people are coming in for extended family, all kinds of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
taking on everybody's issues and everyone's problems. And we just have to learn to let go and let grown people be responsible for grown people. Kids, we got them, but the grown folks got to be responsible for their own emotions and how they feel.
And they can do it.
They can. I believe in
They
them.
can
They
do it.
absolutely
They can
can.
do it.
Or they can come see me and you. That's what they can do.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. T. This conversation, I really could have it for several more hours because I'm just so interested in this subject. And I really know that this blessed a lot of people being able to hear
Yeah.
from you today because it has definitely blessed me and opened up my eyes to what is possible for myself and also for clients that I serve, just really getting the right information and not going undiagnosed, not getting misdiagnosed, not seeing doctors who don't look like us and don't
Mhm.
understand our perspectives. And so I think this is moving the needle today for Black women's health. And so I'm so grateful to you for the work that you're doing day in and day out.
Oh, thank
Truly, it is making a difference. And I'm so excited to continue to hear from you. We will definitely have you back. I want you to tell people how to get in touch with you. And if you have anything going on, feel free to put it in now.
I would say the best way is my social media because it has all my links to my private practice and all the resources. So it's at School Psych DRT, at School Psych Dr. T on Instagram and TikTok. And I post a lot of like tips for unmasking, for testing. Like I post a lot of resources, how to advocate for yourself, how to get work accommodations, school accommodations on my TikTok specifically. So that's at School Psych Dr. T. And then there's my link tree that has all the ways you can get in contact with me.
Listen, y'all, get on her schedule to see about this diagnosis, okay? Because I am just floored at this information. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing your own personal experience. And then like the depth of your expertise is just incredible. So thank you so much. Thank you again for
Oh,
being
thank you
here.
for having me.
You're
Appreciate
so
it.
welcome. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining me on Trigger Proof with Mikki Bey. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really ready to dive deeper, download my free emotional regulation bundle. It includes my ebook, workbook, and a masterclass to help you start regulating with confidence. Find the link in the show notes. And until next time, stay steady, stay grounded, and stay trigger proof.